Nobody announces the day they decide to stop being broke. There's no press conference, no Instagram post, no dramatic moment where someone stands on a mountaintop and says, "Today I choose wealth." It's quieter than that, way quieter. It's a Tuesday afternoon in a parking lot, staring at a receipt, and something just shifts. And that's exactly what this video is about. Not the highlight reel, not the Forbes profile, the before, the messy, relatable, slightly embarrassing before. Because here's what nobody tells you about frugal millionaires. They weren't always frugal. They were, at some point, just like you, spending on autopilot, rationalizing every purchase, telling themselves it was fine. Until one day, it wasn't. These are 10 spending habits frugal millionaires quietly walked away from, and the exact moment something clicked that made them never look back. Number 1, the daily coffee shop ritual. Picture someone who started every single morning at the coffee shop. Not because the coffee was life-changing, honestly, they barely tasted it anymore. It was the routine, the cup in hand, the feeling of starting the day like someone who had their life together. $12, $15 a day, depending on the mood. And the mood was always, "I deserve this." Until one afternoon, they sat down and actually did the math. $15 a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year. That's nearly $4,000 every single year on autopilot, on something they barely noticed drinking. They didn't rage quit the coffee shop dramatically. They just made a cup at home the next morning, sat with that number for a while, and thought, what if that $4,000 was working for me instead? That was the last time the coffee shop got that money. But cutting daily spending is just the beginning. Because number 2 hits a little closer to home for a lot of people. Number 2, buying brand new cars. Instead of buying new luxury vehicles, many wealthy people choose reliable used cars with good fuel efficiency. But before they got there, they were just like most people, walking into a dealership, breathing in that new car smell, and signing papers on something that lost a significant chunk of its value the second they drove off the lot. The turning point for a lot of future millionaires wasn't a financial seminar. It was watching a neighbor who earned more, spent more, and looked wealthier, get quietly crushed by monthly payments while they themselves started investing the difference. True wealth exists on paper, in investments and savings, not in your driveway or closet. The moment that sentence stops sounding like a lecture and starts sounding like freedom, that's the moment the new car habit dies. And speaking of things that look good but cost a fortune, number 3 will sting for a lot of people watching this. Number 3, keeping up with the latest phone. Every single year, a new model drops. Every single year, the marketing is perfect. The camera is slightly better, the chip is slightly faster, and every single year, someone who would later become very quietly wealthy used to be first in line. Then one day, they ask themselves a genuinely uncomfortable question. Is my current phone actually broken? No. Is it actually slow? Not really. Am I upgrading because I need to, or because I feel like I should? Making coffee at home instead of buying it every morning, or keeping your current phone for another year before upgrading, these are the kinds of small, intentional decisions that eventually compound into something serious. The phone habit didn't end because they became cheap. It ended because they realized they were trading real money for the feeling of newness. And feelings, it turns out, don't pay dividends. Number 4, subscriptions on subscriptions on subscriptions. This one is sneaky because each individual subscription feels completely reasonable. $12 for streaming, $9 for that app, $15 for the music, $25 for the meal kit they use twice a month, $40 for the gym they visit occasionally. None of it feels like a problem until you add it up and realize you're paying for an entire lifestyle you're barely living. The turning point is usually a bank statement, one of those rare moments when someone actually reads it line by line. The quiet decision that follows isn't dramatic. It's just canceling one thing, then another, then realizing the silence is actually fine. Instead of buying expensive things to look wealthy, middle-class millionaires live modestly, saving and investing their money to build more wealth over time. Subscriptions are the modern version of looking wealthy, paying for the identity of someone who has everything, while quietly building nothing. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. When you look at your bank statement right now, how many subscriptions do you have that you haven't used in the last 30 days? Be honest. Comment your answer below, because you might surprise yourself, and it might be the most useful thing you do today. Now let's talk about number 5, which is the habit nobody wants to admit to. Number 5, emotional spending after a bad day. Bad meeting at work, argument at home. General feeling that life is slightly too much right now. The solution? Buy something. a new pair of shoes, a gadget, a jacket, something that arrives in a box a few days later and briefly makes the world feel manageable again. This is one of the most common pre-wealth habits there is, and it's also one of the most quietly devastating. There's a powerful psychological benefit to strategic frugality. It builds financial discipline and trains your brain to focus on long-term outcomes rather than short-term emotional relief. The turning point for people who break this habit isn't willpower. It's usually a pause. A walk around the block before opening the app. A rule like, wait 48 hours before any non-essential purchase. The box stops arriving, the account starts growing. Number 6, dining out as a default, not as a treat. As a default, when there's nothing in the fridge, when cooking feels like too much, when it's easier to just order something, the average spend creeps up without anyone really noticing. Even Warren Buffett admits that he's frugal with his money. He prefers eating at home every night because, well, that's much less expensive. That's a man who could eat anywhere on earth every single night. The future millionaires who broke this habit didn't become chefs overnight. They just started treating restaurants as an event instead of a default. That mental reclassification, from normal Tuesday to something we planned and chose, changed everything. The money that used to disappear into takeout containers started showing up in investment accounts instead. Number 7, buying things on credit without a plan to pay them off. This one is less about credit being evil and more about the habit of spending money that doesn't exist yet. The turning point for most people who later build real wealth isn't a lecture about interest rates. It's the physical sensation of paying something off. That moment when a balance hits zero and you feel lighter. Many self-made millionaires started by reducing their debts to increase cash flow and build their rainy day fund. Once you feel what it's like to have money that isn't already spoken for, money that's just yours, going back to carrying a balance feels genuinely unbearable. The habit doesn't end because of discipline. It ends because freedom is more addictive than the thing you bought. Number 8, buying cheap to save money. This one sounds backwards, but stay with it. There's a version of frugality that's actually expensive. Buying the cheapest version of everything, watching it break or wear out, and buying it again and again. Frugality isn't about buying the cheapest option available, but getting the best value. Self-made millionaires often invest in fewer, higher-quality items, rather than accumulating inexpensive things that quickly wear out and need replacement. The turning point is usually a specific purchase, a cheap tool that breaks on the first use, a budget item that costs more in replacements than a quality one would have cost upfront. Think about purchases in terms of cost per use. A $200 pair of shoes that lasts 5 years is cheaper than 5 $50 pairs that each last 1 year. Once you see it that way, you can never unsee it. Number 9, lifestyle inflation with every pay rise. Raise at work, upgrade the apartment, bonus hits, new car, income goes up, spending goes up to match almost automatically, like the lifestyle is just waiting to expand to fill whatever space the money creates. As your income increases, resist the urge to upgrade your lifestyle proportionally. Instead, maintain your current standard of living and direct the additional income toward investments. This concept, lifestyle inflation avoidance, is how many average earners eventually build extraordinary wealth. The turning point is usually the first time someone keeps their lifestyle the same after a raise, watches the difference pile up in their account, and realizes nothing actually changed in their day-to-day happiness. They were already fine. They just didn't know it. And that brings us to number 10, the biggest one, the one that ties everything else together. Number 10, spending to look the part before becoming the part. As one observer noted, the biggest barrier to becoming rich is living like you're rich before you are. Designer clothes on a starter's salary, luxury apartment before the income supports it, bottle service on a budget beer account, the whole performance of wealth, funded by debt and denial. The reason why many quietly wealthy people often go overlooked is because they don't have any visual indicators of their wealth. They wear modest clothing, live in modest houses, and drive modest cars. The turning point for people who break this habit is usually a moment of clarity, a conversation with someone who actually has money, and realizing that person doesn't look anything like the version of rich they'd been performing. Real wealth, it turns out, is invisible. It's in the account. It's in the options. It's in the ability to say no to a job, a situation, a person, and mean it. Building a net worth isn't solely about major financial decisions. It's the smaller day-to-day habits that compound over time to create significant wealth. And that's the whole point of every single story in this video. Nobody on this list had a dramatic overnight transformation. No one woke up enlightened. They just had a moment, a receipt, a bank statement, a broken cheap thing, a neighbor drowning in payments where something clicked. And they made a quiet decision, and they didn't look back. The habits they walked away from weren't just spending habits. They were identity habits, ways of telling the world and themselves a story about who they were. And the moment they stopped needing to tell that story out loud, they started actually building it in silence. That's the real confession. Wealth isn't loud. The decision to build it never is. If this video hit differently than the usual money tips, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this, subscribe because there's a lot more where that came from.